climate access is actually a real inspiration for what we've been trying to do in Los Angeles, as has been the work that's been done by Yale and at George Mason. We've tried to take it very seriously and take best practices to heart. In fact, that's why I come here so humbly, is because I'm hoping to learn from you today to go forward. Our effort was motivated in large part by the national gridlock that's been taking place. And we've been thinking that on climate change, there's been magical thinking, that the same activism will yield a new result. It's almost like thinking there would be a Latin American Jesuit appointed pope or something crazy like, wait, that happened. Okay, well, so to explain the institutional entities, we have Climate Resolve is the nonprofit organization, and I am in the lamentable situation where I have one foot in government and one foot in the nonprofit sector. Then we have Sea Change LA, which is the public-facing website for the LA Regional Collaborative for Climate Action Sustainability. That is to encourage people to understand the climate science as it affects them locally at Sea Change LA. The regional collaborative is composed of LA City, LA County, the other major cities in Los Angeles County, a county of 10 million people. And then UCLA is the author of the climate studies that has been commissioned by the city of LA using DOE and ARA funds to get that process started. So again, we felt that there was gridlock at the national level. And it seems that there's a consensus that if we can make climate change relevant in people's lives, we can in turn spark a new direction. And so we went from going from that vague dread that is part of everyone's life about climate change, thinking people's lives, into something specific that can actually engender some enthusiasm, going from the charismatic megafauna down to people that are recognizable on the local level. And through this process, we decided to go through a sort of a branding process and for the Sea Change public-facing website. And we moved from colors from left to right as a way of showing a transition of time, but also potentially a transition in attitudes. And we incorporated this with the release of the mid-century temperature study that was performed by UCLA, going from talking about both the impacts locally as well as what can be done locally. And that's downtown LA, and because LA is so big and there's so many different areas, and actually these micro climates are distinct. I can get into that in a little while, that we had to also do a separate poster related to the San Fernando Valley. And we also felt we needed human faces, and this is a small sample of the testimonials that we have, and we have literally dozens more of people from Los Angeles weighing in and providing their sort of commitment on taking action on climate change. The website is pretty extensive. This is just a quick view. The mid-century temperature study, which is done by Dr. Alex Hall at UCLA, he is the lead author of the regional climate studies for the next IPCC report. And what he did is that he took 5 global climate models, did a dynamic downscaling on 5 of them, then took the statistical relationship between the local and the global, and then did statistical downscales on 20 others from the data he received from the dynamical downscales. For some of you that will make sense, and for others you'll just nod very politely. And so essentially what he did is that the typical climate model is, let me go ahead, goes from a resolution of about 100 kilometers across, and Dr. Hall brought it down to 2 kilometers. And so we were able to show distinctions down to the neighborhood scale of one part of the San Fernando Valley and what they will be experiencing, let's say, in Porter Ranch versus somebody in Studio City. and making it relevant to the neighborhood scale. And here we're simply showing that by mid-century, the city of Los Angeles will be experiencing many more extreme heat days. And so we had Woodland Hills, which is in the San Fernando Valley, quadrupling the number of extreme heat days. And in the ocean areas, adjacent areas, actually hardly any increase. And when we did this release, you can see a picture of Mayor Villaraigosa with the city in the background. It was a very popular event. We had tremendous support working with the reporter very closely over a course of months at the Los Angeles Times. He got the story right. We held his hand. One mighty, oh, it's being taped, I can't use another word, but okay, we spoon-fed him the story. So that's what happened. And he did a really terrific job. It had more hits than any other thing on the website, the LA Times website, for a week. And we brought in some unusual partners. We had the American Red Cross, which has rarely taken any position on climate change. They showed up here. And we had the head of the local utility talking about the impacts to the energy load with the advent of additional warming. We felt that that was important to bring in new voices so that it's not just politicians, scientists, and environmentalists bringing the information. It's very critical. It's part of our strategy. The San Fernando Valley paper put it right on their front page. And we had over 90 outlets that covered us. And to this day, people are still coming to us asking for information based on our release of last June. The LA Times did an editorial. They took our very talking points, the very words that we used, that we fed them, which was that it's not about polar bears, it's about our backyard, which was perfect. And then the late, great New York Times Green blog up there covered it. And we had a lot of activity on social media. We tried some things, and this was kind of a failure. This was kind of a time sink. I feel bad about it. We also created B-roll for the local television outlets, and nobody took advantage of that. So sometimes you go down a route, and it's not as fruitful as others. We felt a barrier would be is that people couldn't relate to what 2040 felt like. And so we tried to create a chart so that people could relate to it. So you can see that E.T. came out 30 years ago, so 30 years from now would be the same amount of time. And so in some people's lifetimes, maybe not for some of you young folks, but for some of us, E.T. felt like it just came out, and that was 30 years ago. So that was the response that we wanted. This was an interactive artwork that we had. And then this actually was highly successful, where we really went down again to the neighborhood level, and we had an interactive experience for Angelenos. And so let me walk you through this. So this is a screenshot of downtown LA right now, the LA Live Center. Some of you might know this area on Figueroa Avenue. But we then walked people through what a complete street could look like in this area. And so this is a vision. And when I've shown this around Los Angeles, there's literally a gasp at this time. People go, ah, wow. I mean, for those of us in planning and doing renderings, this is like old school, you know, but for people who don't experience it, it's something very special. And then this is believe it or not, in the San Fernando Valley, it's the LA River. I apologize in advance for this being the LA River, but you may remember it from the great film Terminator, where they had a nice chase scene. Llewellyn, do you remember that scene? Yeah, okay, just checking. All right, so then you could have a new vision of the LA River. And so that people can experience it. And the way that we frame this is that in making the investments to meet the challenge of climate change, we can make Los Angeles a better city. And this is exactly the idea that we were planning in people's minds. Right now, LAUSD is sending kids to school in August. And when they get to their playgrounds this last August, that playground was 165 degrees. So we'll be getting into our Hot City Cool Roofs campaign in a minute, but just to let you know, the next campaign after this is Hot City Cool Playgrounds. But this is what that playground could become. And we think it's so important to plant the seed of an idea. It's not going to look like this exactly, and we also need the revenue to make these sort of changes. And again, an alley with transparent people. It's very exciting. All right. So the next steps is that there are additional studies coming out. Some of you are familiar with the Santa Ana wind condition in Southern California. There's a study coming out about that mixed with wildfire. There is a study coming out on snowpack, on precipitation, on soil hydrology. That's a very sexy topic. And then we are talking about how to get people to be more excited on the Sea Change website about about actions that they can take, and moving on a cool roof campaign ordinance with incentives and adaptation policies in LA that people can understand. And so this is sort of an iconic picture for those of us who live in Southern California, that you could surf in the morning and ski in the afternoon. We've heard this. Not many people have done it, though, but it can be done. But this is sort of the iconic photograph, and our snowpack study is going to say, not for much longer. And part of our campaign, in fact, this just took place last Friday. We had Mayor Villaraigosa launching this initiative of putting cool roofs, not just on municipal buildings, that we've already done, but there's going to be expanded incentives by the local utility, LA Department of Water and Power. We're looking at 30 cents per square foot, which is pretty good for materials. And we're rolling out regulations adopting the Cal Green codes to mandate that residences have cool roofs in LA. And that'll be a little bit of a political fight, but we think it's very winnable. And so my challenge right now is essentially moving from on multiple fronts with multiple policies related to climate change. And so essentially what we're looking for is providing enough political support so that we have the political cover for the local council members to vote for rate increases, fees, and tax revenue. And if you don't have the revenue, you don't have the projects. So on the rate side, California now mandates that 33% of all energy portfolios, a third of that, I'm sorry, 1/3 of our energy in the state of California has to be renewable by the year 2020. But they don't provide a funding source for that. So you have to go to the ratepayers to get the funds to meet that mandate. On energy efficiency, it's 10% reduction over projected load by the year 2020. And the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power is moving off of coal. And that transition of getting out of the Navajo Generating Station and the Intermountain Power Project will cost many billions of dollars to find alternative sources and to put them into the grid. On water, which is very important for resiliency in our view, is that we're moving to much more local water sourcing. Right now, when it rains in Los Angeles, 80% of that water goes into the sea, 80%. And that's billions of gallons with each rain event. The goal is to capture that water, have it cleaned up, have it ponded, injected, so it can be used later. So the Department of Water and Power, our goal right now is at 12% local water supply today, snapshot, 2013, we want to go to 26% by 2020. And then 37% by 2035. So these are very ambitious goals that are in the planning documents today, but how do we, at the end of the day, get them funded? And as someone who's been in LA politics for a long time, I know that even though 14 out of the 15 incoming council members will be liberal Democrats this July when they're sworn in, 14 out of the 15, and the one Republican actually ain't so bad. They will still not vote for a rate increase or a fee assessment to capture more stormwater, or increase rates on sewage. They won't do it unless there is popular support behind that. And so that's my challenge. How do I reach out to the communities of Los Angeles to provide that support? And that's from the nonprofit arm trying to support the city's objectives. That's my challenge.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan.